The rhythm of the Nile, dawn of the inundation seasonize. The first light of dawn creeps over the eastern horizon. You find yourself stirring in the quiet embrace of an ancient Egyptian village along the banks of the Nile. The air is cool and still, carrying the faint, earthy scent of mud and reeds that have baked under yesterday's sun. Your home, a modest structure of sun-dried mud, feels solid yet humble, its walls etched with the simple patterns of daily life scratches from tools. Faint outlines of family hands pressed into the clay during construction. The floor beneath your feet is packed earth, smoothed by countless footsteps. And as you rise from your reed mat, the fibers crunch softly, a familiar sound that marks the beginning of another day in this timeless rhythm. The Nile River, that great lifeline snaking through the desert, is the heart of everything here. For thousands of years, from the pre-dynastic times around 5000 BCE through the Old Kingdom and beyond, the Egyptians have lived in harmony with its predictable yet powerful cycles. You know this not as abstract history, but as the very pulse of your existence. The river's annual inundation, known as Akit in your calendar, begins around June or July, when the distant rains in the Ethiopian highlands swell its waters. But now, in these early days leading up to the flood, the Nile runs low and steady, its surface a glassy mirror reflecting the palm trees that line its edges. You step outside, feeling the dukiest ground under your bare feet, and gaze. It's a muddy brown, laden with the fertile silt that will soon transform the parched lands into a verdant paradise. Your day starts with the mundane tasks that bind you to this land. Water must be fetched, and you make your way to the river's edge with a clay jar balanced on your shoulder. The path is worn smooth by generations, flanked by acacia bushes whose thorny branches snag at your linen tunic if you're not careful. The fabric, woven from flax grown in last year's fields, is light and breathable, a simple garment dyed in natural hues of white or beige. As you dip the jar into the cool current, the water gurgles softly, filling the vessel with a rhythmic slosh that echoes the river's own flow. This water isn't just for drinking, it's for cooking, cleaning, and irrigating the small garden plots where you grow onions, garlic, and lentils. The act is repetitive, almost meditative. Bend, scoop, lift, carry. Each motion a quiet affirmation of survival in this narrow strip of green amid the endless sands. Breakfast follows, a simple affair shared with your family in the dim light of your home. You sit cross-legged on the floor, breaking pieces of emmer wheat bread baked the previous evening in a communal oven fueled by dried dung and straw. The bread is dense and chewy, flavored with a hint of salt from the nearby natron deposits. Beside it, you have dates plucked from the trees that dot the village, their sticky sweetness a small luxury in an otherwise austere diet. Perhaps a bit of cheese from the goats that graze on the sparse grasses, or fish caught the day before, dried and preserved with salt. As you eat, the conversation is low, and practical discussions of the fields, the weather, the signs from the river. Your elders speak of the Nilometer, those stone steps carved into wells along the banks, used to measure the water's rise. A good flood, they say, should reach 16 cubits, enough to deposit the rich black silt without overwhelming the dikes. The village itself is a cluster of similar homes, perhaps 100 or so, nestled on slightly elevated ground to avoid the worst of the coming waters. Mud brick walls enclose courtyards, where children play with balls made from bundled rags, their laughter a soft counterpoint to the calls of ibises wading in the shallows. You join the men in checking the irrigation canals, those vital arteries dug by hand with copper tools and wooden hose. The work is tedious, clearing debris, reinforcing banks with woven reed mats, ensuring the shadufa simple lever with a bucket swings freely to lift water during drier times. Sweat beads on your brow as the sun climbs higher, the heat building gradually, but you pause often, wiping your face with the hem of your tunic. These canals, maintained communally, are a forgotten ingenuity of your people, allowing controlled flooding even before the Great Pyramids rose. In the afternoons, you turn to crafts that sustain the household, perhaps weaving baskets from papyrus reeds harvested from the marshes, their fibrous strands pliable after soaking in the river. The repetitive motion twist loop pulls soothing, your hands moving almost without thought as you sit in the shade of a sycamore fig tree. The leaves rustle gently in the breeze, providing a natural canopy against the relentless sun. Or you might grind grain on a stone corn, the back and forth scrape producing a fine flour that dusts the air with a nutty aroma. These tasks, passed down through families, are the backbone of resilience. Historians like Herodotus, centuries later, would note how the Egyptians depended on the Nile's bounty, but they often overlooked these quiet routines, the way a farmer like you observes the flight of birds or the color of the water to predict the floods. Arrival. As evening falls, the sky turns a deep amber, and you gather with neighbors around a small fire pit. The flames crackle softly, fed by twigs and dried palm fronds, casting flickering shadows on the faces around you. Stories are shared, not grand epics of pharaohs, but practical tales of past floods. One elder recalls the inundation of 2500 BCE during the reign of Djoser, when the waters rose just right, leading to bountiful harvests that filled the granaries. Another mentions the risks. Too little water means famine. Too much brings destruction. You listen, sipping beer brewed from barley in large clay vats, its yeasty temps a comfort after the day's labors. The beer-making process itself is a daily art, mashing, fermenting, straining through sieves, yielding a thick, nutritious drink that wards off the thirst of the desert. Night deepens, and you retire to your mat, the village settling into a hush, broken only by the distant croak of frogs or the lap of the Nile against its banks. The stars wheel overhead, the same constellations your ancestors named, the decans that mark the hours. Sleep comes easily, lulled by the river's murmur, but in your dreams, the inundation is coming, a force both life-giving and unpredictable. But as the first hints of change ripple through the air, what preparations must you make to ensure your fields and family endure? Preparing the fields, ancient tools and techniques. The sun rises again. The air carries a faint dampness, a sign that the inundation season is drawing closer. Though the river remains low for now, you step outside, your feet pressing into the cool, packed earth, and feel the weight of the day's tasks ahead. Today, your focus turns to the fields, the lifeblood of your community, where the land must be readied for the floodwaters that will soon transform the parched soil into fertile ground. The Nile's silt will bring abundance, but only if you prepare with care. Using tools and techniques honed over generations, you make your way to the fields. A short walk from the village, past clumps of date palms, and the low hum of bees gathering nectar from wildflowers. The fields stretch out in a patchwork of small, rectangular plots. Your family's plot, passed down through countless seasons, is modest but vital, measuring perhaps a few aruaris enough to sustain you through the year if the harvest is good. The soil underfoot is dry and cracked, baked by the relentless sun of Pare. The planting season now past. You kneel, running your fingers through the dirt, feeling its gritty texture. It's poor now, but soon it will be reborn. Those low walls of packed mud that will guide the floodwaters across the fields. You carry a wooden hoe, its blade worn smooth from use, and a basket of reeds to reinforce weak spots. The dikes are simple but ingenious, built by hand and maintained communally. You work alongside neighbors, men and women alike, digging and patting down the earth. The labor is repetitive. Scoop the soil, pile it high, tamp it firm. Sweat trickles down your back, and you pause to sip from a water jar, the liquid cool from being stored in the shade. Occasionally, you use a shaduf to lift water from a nearby canal, splashing it onto the dike to make the mud more pliable. The creak of the wooden pole and the splash of the bucket are a steady rhythm, blending with the distant calls of herons in the marshes. The tools you use are humble but effective, crafted from the materials the Nile provides. Your hoe is made from acacia wood, its blade sometimes tipped with copper if you're fortunate enough to afford it. Most farmers, like you, rely on wood alone, sharpened to a fine edge through careful scraping against stone. For finer work, you have a hand sickle with a flint blade. These channels, dug with pointed digging sticks, crisscross the fields like veins, designed to spread water evenly when the flood arrives. You check each one, clearing out pebbles and silt with a woven basket, ensuring the flow will be unimpeded. The work is slow, almost meditative, as you move from one channel to the next, the earth yielding under your touch. As you work, you recall the wisdom of your elders, who spoke of the Nilamata readings from Memphis or Elephantine, far to the south. A flood reaching 16 cubits is ideal, they said, depositing just enough silt without washing away the dikes. Too low, and the fields will starve. Too high, and your labor could be swept away. You glance at the river, its current still calm, but carrying a heavier load of sediment, a sign the inundation is near. You think of the scribes who record these measurements, their papyrus scrolls detailing the river's moods since the days of the Old Kingdom. Around 2600 BCE, their records guide your preparations. Though you rely just as much on the signs around you, the way the ibises gather in greater numbers, or the slight shift in the wind's direction, midday brings a break, and you sit in the shade of a tamarisk tree, its feathery branches offering respite from the heat. You share a meal with your fellow farmers, more emmer bread, a handful of dried figs, and a paste of ground lentils flavored with garlic. The conversation turns to the fields, to the hope of a good flood, and to the stories of past seasons. One man, grizzled and bent from years of labor, tells of a flood in his grandfather's time when the waters came too fast, breaching the dikes and flooding homes. The lesson was clear: Preparation is everything. You nod, chewing slowly, the taste of the lentils grounding you in the moment. The afternoon is spent sowing the first seeds in higher, drier plots that won't be flooded. You carry a linen sack filled with immer, wheat, and barley, scattering the grains by hand in a practiced arc. Each seed is a promise, a hope that the Nile's silt will nurture it into stalks heavy with grain. You press the seeds into the soil with your feet, a gentle shuffle that feels like a dance with the earth itself. This early sowing is a precaution, a way to hedge against an unpredictable flood. The lower fields, where the bulk of the crop will grow, must wait for the waters to recede, but these high plots give you a head start as the sun dips low, painting the sky in hues of ochre and rose. You finish by checking the storage pits near the village. These sunken, mud-lined silos hold last year's grain, sealed with clay to keep out pests and moisture. You inspect the seals, ensuring no cracks have formed, and add a layer of ash to deter insects, a trick learned from your mother. The pits are a lifeline, ensuring food through the flood season when fresh crops are scarce. You work methodically, the repetitive tasks a quiet comfort, each action tying you to the land and the river. Night falls, and you return home, the air now cool and heavy with the scent of water and earth. You lie on your reed mat, listening to the soft lapping of the Nile in the distance. The village is quiet, save for the occasional bleat of a goat or the rustle of palm fronds. Your body aches from the day's labor, but your mind is calm, lulled by the certainty of routine. Yet, as you drift toward sleep, a question lingers. When the waters finally rise, how will your preparations hold against the river's unpredictable power? Village life, daily routines before the waters rise. The dawn breaks gently over your village, the Nile shimmering under the first rays of sunlight. You rise from your reed mat, the faint creak of its fibers blending with the distant calls of waterfowl stirring in the marshes. The air is still cool, carrying the scent of damp earth and the sweet decay of last season's vegetation. The inundation season looms closer, and the village hums with a quiet urgency. Each person engaged in the small, repetitive tasks that define life before the flood transforms the landscape. You pull on your linen tunic, its coarse weave familiar against your skin, and step outside into the rhythm of another day along the Nile. Your home, like others in the village, is a low, mud brick structure with a flat roof where you sometimes sleep to escape the heat. The walls are thick, keeping the interior cool, and the doorway opens to a small courtyard where your family gathers. You begin the morning by fetching water, as always, trudging to the river with a clay jar balanced on your shoulder. The path is lined with tamarisk bushes, their feathery leaves brushing against you as you pass. At the water's edge, you kneel, dipping the jar into the current, its surface now flecked with more sediment, a subtle sign of the coming flood. The water is heavy, sloshing against the jar's sides, and you carry it back carefully, mindful not to spill. Back in the courtyard, your family is already at work. Your mother kneads dough for emmer wheat bread, her hands moving in a steady, practiced motion, the faint grit of flour dusting her fingers. The dough is shaped into flat rounds and set to bake in a communal oven at the village's center, where neighbors take turns tending the fire. The smell of burning dung and straw wafts through the air, mingling with the nutty aroma of baking bread. You help by grinding more grain on a stone quern, the back and forth scrape of the handstone, a soothing, monotonous sound. The flour collects in a shallow basket, and you pause to wipe sweat from your brow. The morning already warming under the climbing sun. Children scamper through the village, their laughter a bright thread in the tapestry of daily life. They play with balls of knotted rags or chase each other through the narrow lanes between houses, dodging goats tethered to wooden stakes. You watch them briefly, remembering your own childhood games, carving sticks into shapes or tossing pebbles in a game of skill. But there's work to be done, and you join your father in repairing a reed mat used to shade the courtyard. The reeds, harvested from the river's edge, are brittle now, and you weave fresh ones into the gaps, your fingers moving deftly in a pattern learned years ago. The task is repetitive, almost hypnotic, the rustle of reeds blending with the soft cluck of hens scratching in the dirt nearby. Midday brings a pause, and you sit with your family to eat. The meal is simple, bread still warm from the oven, a handful of dates, and a paste of lentils flavored with wild herbs gathered from the riverbank. You drink beer from a clay cup, its thick, yeasty texture quenching the thirst of the day. The conversation is practical talk of the fields, the state of the dikes, the behavior of the river. Your uncle mentions the Nilometer at Elephantine, where priests have reported the water rising slightly higher than last week. The news is both reassuring and unsettling. The flood is coming, but its strength remains uncertain. You chew slowly, savoring the sweetness of the dates, their sticky texture grounding you in the moment. Afternoon tasks vary, but today you help repair a fishing net, a communal tool shared among several families. You sit in the shade of a sycamore fig tree, its broad leaves casting dappled shadows, and work the flax fibers with a bone needle. The net is heavy, woven tightly to catch fish in the shallows when the waters rise. Nodding and looping, your hands move with a rhythm that lulls your mind, the repetitive motion, a quiet meditation. Nearby, women weave baskets or spin flax into thread, their chatter a low hum about the coming festival to honor Hapi, the god of the Nile. These crafts are not just practical, but communal, binding the village together through shared effort. As the sun begins to dip, you walk to the edge of the village to check the livestock. The goats, tethered near a patch of sparse grass, bleat softly as you approach. You inspect their hooves, ensuring no thorns have lodged their plepets, and scatter a handful of barley from the storage pits to supplement their grazing. The animals are lean but healthy, their milk a vital source of cheese and nourishment during the flood season. You also check the fowl ducks and hens kept in woven pens, ensuring their enclosures are secure against jackals that prowl at night. These tasks, though mundane, are critical, each one a thread in the fabric of survival. Evening settles over the village, and you join neighbors around a small fire pit in the communal square. The flames crackle, fed by dried palm fronds, casting a warm glow on faces weathered by sun and labor. Stories are shared, not of pharaohs or battles, but of ordinary lives. A fisherman who once caught a catfish as long as his arm, or a season when the flood came late, testing the village's stores. You sip more beer, its tang familiar, and listen as an elder speaks of the Old Kingdom, around 2600 BCE, when the Nile's rhythms shaped the first great harvests. The fire's warmth and the story's cadence are soothing, lulling you into a state of calm as you return to your home and lie on your mat. The village grows quiet, save for the soft lap of the Nile and the occasional croak of a frog. The stars above are bright, their patterns guiding your thoughts to the days ahead. The inundation is near, and the village's preparations are nearly complete. But a question lingers in the stillness. What rituals and offerings must you make to ensure the gods favor your village when the waters arrive? The gods and rituals, invoking protection from the floods. The morning light filters through the palm fronds, casting long shadows across your village as you rise from your reed mat. The air feels heavier today, thick with the scent of the Nile's muddy waters and the faint tang of dew-soaked earth. The river, just beyond the cluster of mud brick homes, runs slightly higher, its surface rippling with the first signs of the inundation's approach. You sense the shift in the village's rhythm. Today, the focus turns to the gods, to the rituals that have bound your people to the Nile cycles since the days of the First Dynasty, around 3100 BC. You pull on your linen tunic, its familiar weight, and step into the courtyard to begin the day. Your first task is to prepare an offering for Hapi, the god of the Nile's flood, whose benevolence ensures the river's life-giving silt. You walk to the small garden plot behind your home, where rows of onions and leeks grow in the sandy soil, nourished by water carried from the river. With a flint knife, you carefully cut a bundle of leeks, their sharp, green scent filling the air as you tie them with a strip of flax. From the storage pit, you retrieve a small clay jar of barley beer, its surface sealed with a wax plug to preserve its yeasty temps. These offerings, simple but heartfelt, will join those of your neighbors in a communal ceremony at the river's edge, a tradition older than the pyramids themselves. The village is alive with quiet preparation. You pass women weaving garlands of lotus flowers, their delicate blue petals plucked from the shallows where the Nile meets the marshes. The flowers' sweet fragrance mingles with the earthy smell of mud, a reminder of the river's dual nature giver of life and potential destroyer. Children, usually scampering through the lanes, move with purpose today, carrying baskets of dried fish or dates to contribute to the offerings. You join your father at the communal oven, where he bakes a special loaf of emmer bread, shaped to resemble the Nile's winding path. The dough is scored with a reed, and as it bakes, the heat releases a nutty aroma that drifts through the village, blending with the smoke of burning palm fronds. The villagers gather at a small shrine near the river, a modest structure of mud bricks adorned with carvings of Hapi, his figure plump and androgynous, symbolizing fertility. The shrine is surrounded by tamarisk trees, their feathery branches swaying in the breeze, and a low stone altar where offerings will be placed. You approach with your leeks and beer, setting them beside baskets of figs, fish, and bread from other families. A local priest, an elder named Thomas, stands before the altar, his linen kilt pristine despite the dust of the season. His voice, low and steady, recites prayers recorded on papyrus scrolls since the Old Kingdom, invoking Hapi's favor. O Hapi, bringer of the Black Land, let your waters rise gently, nourishing our fields. The words are familiar, their cadence soothing. As you stand shoulder to shoulder with your neighbors, the ground cool beneath your bare feet, The ritual unfolds slowly, each step deliberate. Thamos sprinkles Nile water from a clay bowl onto the offerings, the droplets catching the sunlight as they fall. He burns a handful of natron, the salt-like mineral harvested from nearby deposits, its sharp scent rising in wisps of smoke. You join the others in a soft chant, repeating ancient words that feel as much a part of the land as the river itself. The chant is repetitive, almost hypnotic, its rhythm blending with the lapping of the Nile against the bank. You feel a sense of unity, a shared hope that the gods will guide the flood to the perfect height 16 cubits. As the Nilometers measure, enough to enrich the soil without sweeping away homes or fields. As noon approaches, the ceremony shifts to the river itself. You follow the procession to the water's edge, where a small wooden boat, no larger than a man's arm, has been crafted from acacia wood. It's a model of the vessels that ply the Nile for trade, its hull painted with ochre and blue. Into this boat, the priest places a portion of the offerings, lotus flowers, a loaf of bread, a small fish, before setting it afloat. You watch as the current carries it downstream, a symbolic gift to Hapi carried toward the distant sea. The act is simple but profound, a reminder of your dependence on the river's mercy. The boat bobs gently, its colors vivid against the muddy water, until it disappears around a bend. The afternoon is spent in quieter devotion. Back at home, you sweep the courtyard and place a small clay figure of Hapi, molded by your sister, in a niche above the doorway. It's a common practice, these household shrines, ensuring the gods' protection over your family. You light a tiny oil lamp, its flaxwick sputtering as it burns sesame oil, casting a soft glow on the figure's rounded features. The ritual is personal, a moment of reflection as you murmur a prayer for safety through the flood season. Outside, neighbors perform similar acts. Some burn incense made from dried herbs. Others sprinkle natron around their homes to ward off misfortune as evening falls. The village gathers again, this time for a shared meal near the shrine. You sit on woven mats, the ground softened by layers of palm leaves, and share bread, beer, and roasted fish. The fire pit crackles, its warmth a comfort against the cooling air. Stories circulate, not of grand myths, but of practical faith. A season when offerings to Hapi brought a perfect flood, or a time when neglected rituals led to a weak harvest. An elder recalls the reign of Menes, the first pharaoh, who united Upper and Lower Egypt and built channels to tame the Nile's flow. His story, grounded in the oral traditions of your people, weaves the gods into the fabric of daily life. A reminder that survival depends on both labor and faith. Night settles over the village, the stars bright above the darkened Nile. You lie on your mat, the faint scent of oil and natron lingering in the air. The rituals have left you calm, connected to the river and the gods. But as sleep pulls you under, a question stirs. When the waters finally rise, will Hapi hear your prayers? Or will the river's power test your village in ways you cannot yet foresee? Rising waters, observing the Nile's swell, the dawn arrives with a subtle shift in the air, a heavier dampness that clings to your skin as you rise from your reed mat. The Nile, just beyond the village, no longer mirrors the calm of previous days. Its surface churns with a restless energy, carrying more silt and debris from distant rains in the Ethiopian highlands. You pull on your linen tunic. It's familiar, weaves slightly damp from the morning's humidity, and step outside. The village is quieter today, the usual hum of activity subdued as eyes turn to the river. The inundation has begun, and you, like your neighbors, are drawn to the water's edge to observe its swelling power. You walk the familiar path to the Nile, your bare feet pressing into the cooling mud, now softened by the river's rising tide. The air smells of wet earth and decaying reeds, a rich, organic scent that signals the season of Akit is truly underway. The riverbank, usually a gentle slope, is lapped by higher waters, and you notice the reeds bending under the current's pull. You carry a simple tula-long acacia stick marked with notches, a crude but effective way to measure the water's rise against the stone steps of the village's Nilometer, a shallow well dug near the bank. The steps, carved centuries ago, are worn smooth, their edges softened by seasons of floods. You kneel beside them, noting that the water has crept up 2 steps since yesterday, a sign that the flood is gaining strength. The Nilometer is more than a tool. It's a communal touchstone. Neighbors gather nearby, their voices low as they discuss the water's progress. An elder, her face lined from years under the sun, recalls the floods of her youth when the Nile reached the ideal 16 cubits during the reign of Khufu, around 2580 BCE, ensuring bountiful harvests. You listen, marking the stick with a flint knife to record today's level. The act is methodical, almost soothing, as you align the notches with the waterline, the faint scratch of the blade blending with the river's gentle gurgle. The measurement is shared with a scribe from a nearby town who will add it to the records kept on papyrus, a practice that has guided farmers since the Old Kingdom back in the village. You join others in checking the dikes and canals prepared weeks ago. The mud walls, reinforced with reeds and tamped earth, stand firm for now, but you walk their lengths, inspecting for cracks or weak spots. You carry a basket of wet clay, patching any gaps with careful presses of your hands, the cool mud squishing between your fingers. The work is repetitive, grounding you in the moment as you move from one section to the next, the sun climbing higher and warming your back. Occasionally, you pause to watch the river, its current now flecked with foam and bits of palm frond, a reminder of its growing strength. The canals dug to guide the floodwaters into the fields are holding, but you clear a few stray branches to ensure the flow remains even. Midday brings a brief respite, and you sit in the shade of a sycamore fig tree, its broad leaves rustling softly. You share a meal with your family, emmer bread, a handful of dried dates, and a small portion of salted fish caught before the waters grew too turbulent. The fish's briny flavor lingers on your tongue as you sip barley beer from a clay cup, its yeasty thickness a comfort in the heat. Your father speaks of the river's signs, the way the ibises cluster in greater numbers along the banks, or the faint reddish hue in the water, a mark of the silt carried from distant mountains. These observations, passed down through generations, are as vital as the Nilometer's measurements, guiding your expectations for the flood's outcome. The afternoon is spent monitoring the village's higher ground, where homes and storage pits are situated to avoid the rising waters. You check the mud brick walls of your house, ensuring no cracks have formed from the shifting, waterlogged soil. With a wooden mallet, you tap loose bricks back into place. The dull thud, a steady rhythm against the distant rush of the Nile. The storage pits, lined with clay and sealed with ash, are inspected again, their contents barley, wheat, and dried lentils critical for the weeks when fresh food will be scarce. You sprinkle more ash around the seals, a precaution against ants and beetles. The faint, powdery scent mixing with the damp air as the sun dips, casting a warm, amber glow over the village. You return to the riverbank for another reading. The water has climbed another step, its surface now a swirling mix of brown and gray, carrying small branches and clumps of reeds. You mark the stick again, noting the steady rise, and share a glance with a neighbor, a silent acknowledgement of the river's power. The scene is calm but charged with anticipation, the village poised between preparation and surrender to the Nile's will. Children, sensing the shift, play more quietly, tossing pebbles into the shallows, their laughter softer than usual. Evening gathers the village around a fire pit, the flames crackling as they consume dried palm fronds. You sit on a woven mat, the ground cool beneath you, and share stories of past floods. An elder tells of a season when the Nile rose to high, flooding fields and homes, yet the community rebuilt, stronger for it. The story, rooted in the resilience of your people, is a reminder of the balance between fear and hope. You sip beer, its familiar tang soothing, and feel the weight of the day settle into your bones. As night falls, you lie on your mat, the village hushed, save for the river's constant murmur. Now louder, more insistent, the stars above trace their ancient paths, and the air carries the scent of water and silt, a promise of fertility, but also uncertainty. You drift toward sleep, lulled by the Nile's song, but a question lingers in the quiet as the waters continue to rise. How will your village adapt to the challenges of a landscape transformed? Evacuation and adaptation. Moving to higher ground, the morning air is thick with moisture as you rise from your reed mat. The Nile's presence more palpable than ever. Its waters, now visibly higher, lap closer to the village, their muddy surface swirling with silt and debris. The inundation is no longer a distant promise, but a reality reshaping the landscape. You pull on your linen tunic, its fabric clinging slightly to your skin in the humid dawn, and step outside. The village hums with a quiet resolve. The time has come to move to higher ground, a ritual as old as the river itself, practiced since the pre-dynastic period around 4000 BCE. The Nile's rise demands adaptation, and you, like your neighbors, begin the careful process of safeguarding your home and family. You start by assessing your home. A sturdy mud brick structure built on a slight rise to avoid the worst of the flood. The waters haven't reached the village yet, but low-lying areas nearby are already submerged. The fields you prepared weeks ago, now glistening under shallow pools. You gather essential belongings, a woven basket of dried lentils and barley, a clay jar of beer sealed with wax, and a bundle of flax clothing. These are carried to a temporary shelter on higher ground, a communal area elevated above the floodplain where the village will regroup. The shelter, a cluster of reed huts and mud brick platforms, is a familiar refuge, rebuilt each season with materials from the river's edge. The move is methodical, a practiced routine. You sling a heavy basket over your shoulder, its weight balanced by a leather strap, and join a line of villagers trudging up the gentle slope. Children carry smaller loads, baskets of dates or rolled mats, while elders guide the livestock, goats and hens tethered with flax ropes. The air smells of wet earth and reeds, and the ground underfoot is soft, the soil saturated from the rising waters. You pause to help a neighbor secure a clay pot, its surface slick with mud, and share a nod of mutual understanding. The task is repetitive, each step a quiet act of resilience. The rustle of baskets and the bleating of goats blending with the distant rush of the Nile at the high ground. You set up camp, weaving fresh reeds into mats to cover the ground and provide a dry surface. The work is slow, your hands moving in familiar patterns as you twist and knot the fibers, their damp, grassy scent filling the air. The communal shelter is a patchwork of such mats and low mud walls, offering shade and protection from the occasional rain that accompanies the flood season. You help erect a simple canopy of palm fronds, their brittle edges rustling as you tie them to wooden poles with flax cords. The structure is basic but sufficient, a testament to the ingenuity of your people, who have adapted to the Nile's cycles for millennia. Midday brings a pause, and you sit with your family under the canopy, sharing a meal of immer bread and dried fish, the latter's salty temps a reminder of the river's bounty. You sip water from a clay jar, its contents drawn from a well dug on the high ground, safe from the flood's reach. The conversation is practical, plans for the days ahead, the state of the storage pits left behind, the behavior of the river. Your mother recalls a flood from her childhood. During the reign of Djoser, around 2650 BCE, when the village moved to higher ground for nearly 2 months, her story, grounded in memory, underscores the importance of preparation, of trusting the rhythms learned from ancestors. The afternoon is spent securing the temporary settlement. You check the livestock pens, ensuring the goats and fowl are safely enclosed with woven reed fences. The animals are restless, their bleats and clucks a constant backdrop as you scatter barley from your stores to keep them fed. You also inspect the communal storage pits, dug into the dry soil of the high ground and lined with clay to protect against moisture. These hold surplus grain and dried goods, sealed with ash and clay to deter pests. You sprinkle more ash around the edges, its faint, powdery scent a familiar precaution, and press the seals firmly to ensure they hold as the sun dips, casting long shadows over the flooded plain below. You return to the village briefly to check your home. The waters have crept closer, lapping at the base of the mud brick walls, but the elevated foundation holds firm for now. You reinforce the doorway with a layer of packed mud, the cool, wet earth squishing under your palms, and move any remaining belongings, reed mats, a small oil lamp to higher shelves. The task is repetitive, almost meditative, each motion tying you to the countless generations who faced the same flood. You glance at the Nile, its surface now a turbulent expanse, carrying branches and clumps of reeds. Downstream, evening finds you back at the high ground, gathered with neighbors around a small fire pit. The flames crackle, fed by dried tamarisk branches, their smoky aroma mingling with the damp air. You share stories of past inundations, of seasons when the Nile was generous or cruel. An elder speaks of a flood that brought so much silt it enriched the fields for years, a tale from the time of the pyramid builders. The fire's warmth and the steady cadence of the stories lull you, the weight of the day settling into your limbs. You sip beer from a shared jar, its yeasty flavor a quiet comfort as night falls. You lie on a reed mat under the open sky, the stars bright above the temporary camp. The Nile's roar is softer here, but its presence is undeniable, a constant murmur in the distance. The air carries the scent of water and earth, a reminder of the river's power. You drift toward sleep, lulled by the rustle of palm fronds and the faint bleating of goats. But a question lingers in the quiet, with the waters reshaping the land. How will you sustain your family in the days ahead? Fishing and foraging, sustenance during the flood. The morning light struggles through a haze of mist, the air heavy with the scent of waterlogged earth as you rise from your reed mat in the temporary camp on higher ground. The Nile, now a sprawling expanse below, has transformed the landscape, its muddy waters flooding the fields and lowlands where your village once bustled. You pull on your linen tunic, its fabric damp from the humid air, and step out into the communal shelter. The inundation has reshaped your daily rhythms, and with the fields submerged, you turn to the river and its surroundings for sustenance. Fishing and foraging, age-old practices honed since the pre-dynastic period around 4000 BCE, become your lifeline. You begin the day by checking the fishing nets, stored under a palm frond canopy to keep them dry. The nets, woven from flax fibers by the women of the village, are heavy and coarse, their tight knots designed to trap fish in the swollen river. You sling one over your shoulder, its weight familiar, and make your way down the slope to a shallow stretch of the Nile where the current slows. The path is muddy, your bare feet sinking slightly with each step, the cool, wet earth squishing between your toes. The air smells of silt and reeds, and the distant croak of frogs mingles with the river's constant rush at the water's edge. You wade in cautiously, the flood's chill biting at your shins. The Nile is alive with fish tilapia, catfish, and perch drawn to the nutrient-rich waters of the inundation. You cast the net with a practiced arc, its edges sinking into the murky depths, and wait, the rope taut in your hands. The task is patient, almost meditative, as you feel for the subtle tugs that signal a catch. After a time, you pull the net back, its fibers heavy with water, and a small haul of wriggling fish. Their scales glint in the muted light, and you place them in a woven basket, their faint, briny scent mixing with the river's earthy aroma. Foraging supplements the catch. You walk along the higher banks, where clumps of wild herbs and edible plants thrive in the damp soil. With a flint knife, you cut bundles of purslane and watercress, their sharp, peppery flavors, a welcome addition to meals. The knife's jagged edge slices cleanly through the stems, and you tie the greens with a strip of flax, adding them to your basket. Occasionally, you find lotus roots in the shallows, their starchy flesh a prized find. Digging them from the mud is slow work, your fingers caked with silt, but the repetitive motion scrape, pull, rinses soothing, grounding you in the moment. Midday brings you back to the camp, where you join your family to prepare the morning's haul. You sit on a reed mat under the canopy, cleaning the fish with a sharp flint blade. The scales scatter like tiny, iridescent coins, and the fish's flesh is set to dry on woven racks, preserved with a dusting of natron from nearby deposits. The natron's sharp mineral scent lingers as you work, your hands moving in a steady rhythm. Nearby, your mother grinds dried lentils into a paste, mixing it with the foraged herbs to make a simple meal. You share emmer bread, now rationed from the storage pits, and a handful of dates, their sticky sweetness a small comfort in the sparse diet of the flood season. The conversation is quiet, focused on survival. Your father speaks of the river's bounty, recalling a season when the fish were so plentiful they filled every basket in the village. His story, rooted in the cycles of the Nile during the Old Kingdom around 2600 BCE, reminds you of the river's dual nature, provider and challenge. You sip water from a clay jar, its contents drawn from the high ground's well, and chew slowly, savoring the earthy flavor of the lentil paste. The meal is simple but sustaining, a testament to the resourcefulness of your people. The afternoon is spent foraging farther afield, where the flood has created temporary marshes. You carry a basket and a digging stick, its pointed end perfect for prying roots from the soft earth. The marshes are alive with birds, ibises, and herons wading in the shallows, their calls sharp against the river's murmur. You find clumps of sedge, its roots edible when boiled, and gather a few snails clinging to the reeds, their small shells destined for a stew. The work is meticulous, each find a small victory, and you pause to rinse your hands in the cool water, the silt clouding briefly before drifting away as the sun dips, casting a soft golden glow over the flooded plain. You return to the camp to check the drying fish. You turn them on the racks, ensuring they cure evenly, the natron's saltiness warding off rot. The task is repetitive, the fish's texture rough under your fingers, but it's a necessary rhythm, tying you to the survival strategies of your ancestors. You also inspect the communal storage pits, ensuring the seals remain intact against the humid air. A sprinkle of ash around the edges keeps insects at bay, its faint scent a familiar precaution. Evening gathers the village around the fire pit, the flames crackling as they consume dried reeds and tamarisk branches. You sit on a woven mat, the ground firm beneath you, and share a meal of roasted fish and boiled sedge roots. The fish's smoky flavor pairs with the root's mild earthiness, and you sip beer from a shared jar, its yeasty tang a quiet luxury. Stories circulate of a fisherman who navigated the floodwaters to save a stranded neighbor, or a season when the marshes yielded enough lotus roots to feed the village for weeks. An elder recalls the ingenuity of the pyramid builders, who used the flood's high waters to float stones to Giza, a tale that weaves practicality with awe as night falls. You lie on your mat under the open sky, the stars bright above the camp. The Nile's roar is a constant presence, its waters reshaping the land below. The air carries the scent of fish and damp earth, a reminder of the day's labor. You drift toward sleep, lulled by the fire's dying crackle and the distant call of a heron. But a question lingers in the quiet, with the floodwaters still rising. How will you protect your home and resources from the challenges they bring? Building and repairing, maintaining homes amidst waters, the morning breaks with a soft, gray light. The the sky veiled by thin clouds that hint at rain, a rare companion to the Nile's inundation. You rise from your reed mat in the temporary camp on higher ground. The air thick with the scent of damp earth and the faint, briny temps of the flooded river below. The Nile's waters have crept higher, swallowing the lowlands and lapping at the edges of your village's mud brick homes. You pull on your linen tunic, its fabric cool against your skin, and step out into the communal shelter. Today, your focus shifts to maintaining and repairing the village's structures, a critical task to ensure they withstand the flood's relentless pressure, a practice rooted in the resilience of your people since the Old Kingdom around 2600 BCE. You begin by gathering tools from the camp: a wooden mallet, a basket of wet clay, and a bundle of dried reeds for reinforcement. The path back to the village is slick, your bare feet sinking into the muddy earth with each step, the cool, wet texture grounding you in the moment. The air smells of silt and decaying vegetation, and the distant rush of the Nile is a constant murmur, louder now as the waters press against the landscape. You reach your home, its mud brick walls still standing firm on their elevated foundation, though the lower edges are darkened by the flood's touch. The sight is both reassuring and urgenter. Preparations have held so far, but the river's power demands vigilance. Your first task is to inspect the walls, running your hands along their rough surface to feel for cracks or soft spots where water might have seeped in. The bricks, made from Nile mud mixed with straw and baked in the sun, are durable but vulnerable to prolonged flooding. You find a small fissure near the base of the wall where the water has eroded the foundation and set to work patching it. Scooping clay from your basket, you press it into the crack, the cool, pliable mud squishing under your fingers. The motion is repetitive. Scoop press, smooth its rhythm, almost meditative, as you work methodically along the wall. To reinforce the repair, you weave reeds into a tight mat and press it into the wet clay, securing it with a layer of mud. The reed's grassy scent mingles with the earthy aroma of the clay, a reminder of the river's dual role as both provider and challenge. Neighbors join the effort, working on their own homes or lending hands to communal structures like the granary and the small shrine to Hapi. You help a family reinforce their doorway, piling mud and stones to create a low barrier against the encroaching water. The task is communal, your hands working alongside others, the soft thud of mallets and the squelch of mud blending with quiet conversation. Someone recalls a flood from decades past when a poorly maintained wall collapsed, forcing the family to rebuild from scratch. The story, grounded in the oral traditions of your village, underscores the importance of these repairs, tying you to the countless generations who faced the same task. Midday brings a pause, and you return to the camp to eat under the palm frond canopy. You sit on a woven mat, sharing emar bread, a handful of dried figs, and a small portion of roasted fish from yesterday's catch. The fish's smoky flavor lingers as you sip water from a clay jar, its contents drawn from the high ground's well. Your mother speaks of the mud brick techniques passed down from her grandmother, who learned them during the reign of Sneferu when the pyramids at Dashur were built. The conversation is practical, focused on survival, the best mix of straw and mud, the angle of a wall to resist water's pressure. You chew slowly, The fig's sweetness, a quiet comfort in the sparse meal. The afternoon is spent repairing the communal granary, a larger mud brick structure where surplus grain is stored. The flood has lapped at its base, softening the lower bricks, and you work with others to reinforce it. You carry baskets of clay and sand, mixing them with water drawn from the river to create a thick paste. The work is labor-intensive, your arms aching as you knead the mixture and spread it over the weakened areas. You add layers of palm fronds and reeds, pressing them into the mud to form a protective barrier. The task is slow. The repetitive motions mix, spread, press, lulling your mind as the sun climbs higher, its warmth tempered by the occasional breeze as the sun dips. Casting a soft orange glow over the flooded plain, you return to your home for a final check. The waters have risen slightly, now reaching the lower steps of the village's Nilometer. You reinforce the doorway with another layer of mud, smoothing it with a flat stone, the surface slick under your palm. You also move a clay lamp and a small basket of tools to a higher shelf inside, ensuring they stay dry. The act is methodical, each motion a quiet affirmation of resilience, connecting you to the farmers of the first dynasty who built their lives around the Nile's rhythms. Evening gathers the village back at the camp, around a fire pit where dried tamarisk branches burn with a steady crackle. You sit on a reed mat, the ground firm beneath you, and share a meal of boiled sedge roots and dried lentils, flavored with foraged herbs. The roots' earthy taste pairs with the lentils' subtle spice, and you sip beer from a shared jar, its yeasty tang a familiar comfort. Stories circulate of a craftsman who devised a way to waterproof mud bricks with natron, or a season when the floods receded early, sparing the village. An elder recalls the ingenuity of the pyramid builders, who used the flood's waters to float massive stones, a tale that weaves practicality with the awe of survival. As night falls, you lie on your mat under the stars, the air heavy with the scent of mud and smoke. The Nile's roar is a distant hum, its waters reshaping the world below. You drift toward sleep, lulled by the fire's dying embers and the soft rustle of palm frond. But a question lingers in the quiet. With the flood at its peak, how will the bonds of your community hold you together through the challenges ahead? Community bonds, sharing resources and stories. The morning dawns with a gentle mist, the air cool and heavy with the scent of the Nile's muddy waters, now at their peak, flooding the lowlands below your temporary camp on higher ground. You rise from your reed mat, the woven fibers creaking softly, and pull on your linen tunic, its fabric slightly damp from the humid air. The village's usual bustle is confined to this elevated refuge, where reed huts and mud brick platforms house your community through the inundation. Today, the focus is not on labor, but on the bonds that hold your village together, sharing resources, skills, and stories to sustain one another through the flood season. A practice as old as the Nile's cycles, rooted in the communal spirit of Egypt's earliest farmers around 4000 BCE. Begin the day by checking the communal storage pits, dug into the dry soil of the high ground and sealed with clay and ash to protect against moisture and pests. You carry a small basket to collect rations for your family, joining neighbors at the pit's edge. The air smells of earth and the faint, powdery scent of ash as you carefully break the seal on a pit, revealing sacks of barley, wheat, and dried lentils. You measure out a portion with a wooden scoop, the grains rustling softly, and distribute them among the gathered families. The process is orderly, guided by an elder named Meret. She recalls a season when the village shared its last stores to survive a late flood. A story from the time of the First Dynasty that underscores the strength of collective effort. The sharing extends beyond food. You join a group repairing a communal fishing net. Sitting under a palm frond canopy, you weave new strands with a bone needle. The repetitive motion loop, pull, not calming your mind. The net's coarse texture brushes against your fingers, and the faint, briny scent of past catches lingers. Nearby, women exchange baskets of foraged herbs purslane and watercress while children trade small clay toys, their laughter a soft counterpoint to the adults' quiet chatter. A neighbor offers you a handful of dried figs, a gesture of goodwill, and you reciprocate with a small jar of beer brewed before the flood. These exchanges, simple but vital, weave a web of mutual reliance. Midday brings a communal meal under the canopy, where the village gathers on woven mats. You share boiled sedge roots, their earthy flavor mixed with a paste of lentils and herbs, and a few strips of dried fish, their smoky tang a reminder of the river's bounty. The meal is modest, rationed to stretch the stores, but the act of eating together feels abundant. You sip water from a clay jar, its coolness drawn from the high ground's well, and listen as your uncle speaks of the flood's progress. The Nilometer checked yesterday shows the waters holding steady, a hopeful sign that the flood may not overwhelm the dikes. His words, grounded in the observations of generations, blend with the rustle of palm fronds overhead. The afternoon is spent in shared tasks. You help a neighbor mend a reed mat, its fibers worn thin from use. Sitting in the shade of a tamarisk tree, you twist fresh reeds into tight coils, their grassy scent mingling with the damp air. The work is slow, your hands moving in a steady rhythm as you chat about small things, the behavior of the ibises, the taste of the season's beer. Across the camp, others repair tools or weave baskets, their efforts pooled to benefit all. A woman named Neith, skilled in spinning flax, teaches a younger girl how to twist fibers into thread, her patient instructions a quiet lesson in continuity. These moments, unremarkable yet profound, bind the village tighter than any rope as the sun dips, casting a warm golden glow over the flooded plain below. You join a group to check the livestock pens. The goats and hens, tethered in woven enclosures, are restless but healthy, their bleats and clucks a familiar backdrop. You scatter a handful of barley from the communal stores, ensuring the animals are fed, and repair a section of the fence with reeds and flax cord. The task is collaborative, with neighbors taking turns to hold the poles or tie the knots, their hands moving in unison. An elder shares a tale of a flood when the village pooled its livestock to protect them from jackals, a memory from the reign of Khufu around 2580 BC. When community meant survival. Evening gathers the village around the fire pit, the flames crackling as they consume dried reeds and tamarisk branches. You sit on a woven mat, the ground firm beneath you, and share a meal of roasted fish and barley flatbread, flavored with foraged watercress. The fish's smoky warmth pairs with the bread's nutty texture, and you sip beer from a shared jar, its yeasty tang a quiet luxury. Stories flow freely, new of a fisherman who shared his catch to feed a struggling family, or a season when the village rebuilt a neighbor's home after a flood. An elder named Tahodub tells of the old kingdom, when farmers worked together to dig canals, their labor blessed by Hapi, his tale, woven with pride, lulls you into a state of calm. The fires glow, reflecting on weathered faces as night falls. You lie on your mat under the open sky, the stars bright above the camp. The Nile's distant roar is a constant hum, its waters still shaping the land below. The air carries the scent of smoke and earth, a reminder of the day's shared efforts. You drift toward sleep, lulled by the fire's dying embers and the soft murmur of voices. But a question lingers in the quiet, with the flood testing your resources. What challenges will arise to test the strength of your community's bonds? Health and healing, coping with flood-borne ailments. The morning light filters through a thin veil of mist, the air heavy with the scent of damp earth and the ever-present Nile, its waters still high, flooding the lowlands below your temporary camp on higher ground. You rise from your reed mat, its fibers damp from the humid air, and pull on your linen tunic, its weave cool but clinging to your skin. The inundation has settled into its peak, transforming the landscape into a patchwork of shimmering pools and muddy banks. Today, your focus shifts to health, to the ailments that creep into the village during the flood season, and the time-honored remedies your people have used since the days of the Old Kingdom, around 2600 BCE, to keep the community strong. You begin the day by checking on your family, gathered under the palm frond canopy of the communal shelter. The damp air and constant proximity to water bring challenges: coughs from the chill, rashes from wading in the floodwaters, and the ever-present threat of fever from insects thriving in the marshes. Your younger sister complains of an itch on her arms, the skin red from scratching after days of fishing in the shallows. You fetch a small clay jar of natron paste, a remedy made from the mineral deposits near the river, its sharp, salty scent familiar. Mixing it with water, you apply it gently to her skin, the cool paste soothing the irritation. The task is careful, repetitive, your fingers moving in slow circles, a quiet act of care rooted in the wisdom of generations. The village is alive with similar efforts. You join a neighbor, an elder named Hetty, known for her knowledge of herbs, as she tends to a child with a persistent cough. She grinds dried coriander seeds and wild chamomile, gathered before the flood, into a fine powder using a stone mortar. The herbs' faint, spicy aroma fills the air as she mixes them with honey from a clay pot, creating a thick syrup. You help her administer it, holding the child steady as she spoons the mixture, its sweetness masking the herb's bitterness. Hetty speaks of remedies passed down from the time of Imhotep, the physician priest of the Third Dynasty, whose knowledge of healing was revered. Her words, calm and steady, blend with the rustle of reeds overhead, grounding you in the moment. Midday brings a communal check on the camp's hygiene. The flood's stagnant pools breed mosquitoes, and you work with others to clear debris from around the camp, reducing places where water can collect. You carry a basket of dry sand, scattering it over muddy patches to keep the ground firm underfoot. the grains crunching softly as they fall. The air smells of silt and the faint, acrid temps of standing water, a reminder of the need for vigilance. You also help burn bundles of dried tamarisk branches, their smoky aroma driving away insects. A practice as old as the villages along the Nile. The task is burn the smoke curling upward in lazy spirals, its scent mingling with the damp air. The meal at noon is shared under the canopy, where you sit on woven mats with your neighbors. You eat boiled lotus roots, their starchy texture paired with a paste of lentils and foraged watercress, and a small portion of dried fish, its smoky flavor lingering. The food is rationed, drawn from the communal storage pits, but the act of eating together feels sustaining. You sip water from a clay jar, its contents boiled to ensure purity, a precaution your mother insists on. She speaks of a flood season when fevers swept through the village, spared only by careful boiling of water and offerings to Sekhmet, the goddess of healing. Her story, rooted in memory, underscores the delicate balance of health during the inundation. The afternoon is spent gathering more herbs from the high ground's edges, where plants like mint and fennel grow in the damp soil. You carry a woven basket and a flint knife, its jagged edge slicing through the stems with a soft snap. The herb's fresh, sharp scent is a relief against the heavy air, and you tie them into bundles with flax strips, careful to preserve their potency. Back at the camp, you help Hetty prepare a poultice for a neighbor's swollen ankle, likely from a strain while waiting. The poultice, made from crushed flax seeds and river mud, is applied with a linen cloth, its cool weight easing the inflammation. The task is slow, your hands pressing gently, the repetitive motion lulling your mind as the sun dips. Casting a soft amber glow over the flooded plain, you check the camp's water supply. The well, dug into the high ground, is lined with stones to keep the water clean, but you inspect it for debris, skimming leaves from the surface with a reed scoop. The water's cool clarity is a small victory, ensuring the village avoids the dysentery that can follow a flood. You sprinkle natron around the well's edge, its mineral scent a precaution against contamination, and cover it with a woven mat to keep out dust. Evening gathers, the village around the fire pit, the flames crackling as they consume dried palm fronds. You sit on a reed mat, the ground firm beneath you, and share a meal of barley flatbread and roasted snails, their subtle flavor enhanced by foraged herbs. You sip beer from a shared jar, its yeasty tang a quiet comfort. Stories circulate of a healer who saved a child with a fever using willow bark, or a season when the village boiled all water to stave off illness. An elder recalls the wisdom of the pyramid builders, who used natron not just for healing, but for preserving the dead, tying health to the eternal. The tales, woven with practical knowledge, lull you into a state of calm, the fire's glow warming your face as night falls. You lie on your mat under the stars, the air heavy with the scent of smoke and herbs. The Nile's distant roar is a constant hum, its waters still reshaping the land below. You drift toward sleep, lulled by the fire's dying embers and the soft murmur of voices. But a question lingers in the quiet, with the flood's challenges testing your health. How will you navigate the swollen river to maintain ties with neighboring villages? Trade and travel, navigating the flooded landscape The morning light breaks through a thinning mist, casting a soft glow over the temporary camp on higher ground where you rise from your reed mat. The Nile, still at its peak, stretches across the landscape below, its muddy waters transforming the familiar fields into a vast, shimmering expanse. You pull on your linen tunic, its fabric cool but heavy with the damp air, and step out into the communal shelter. The inundation has made the river both a barrier and a highway, and today your focus turns to trade and travel, navigating the flooded landscape to maintain ties with neighboring villages, a practice as old as the Nile's cycles, rooted in the ingenuity of Egypt's farmers since the pre-dynastic period around 4000 BCE. You begin by preparing a small reed boat, a lightweight vessel crafted from tightly bundled papyrus stalks, its hull sealed with pitch from acacia sap. The boat, no longer than 2 men, is stored under a palm frond canopy to keep it dry. You check its bindings, running your hands along the coarse reeds to ensure no cracks have formed, the faint, grassy scent of papyrus filling the air. With a wooden paddle and a woven basket of good-dried fish, a small jar of barley beer, and a bundle of woven flax mats, you head toward the water's edge. The path is slick, your bare feet sinking into the muddy earth, the cool, wet texture grounding you as the distant rush of the Nile grows louder at the riverbank. The water is turbulent, carrying silt and debris from upstream. You launch the boat with a neighbor, Tommy's, who is skilled in navigating the floodwaters. The current tugs at the hull as you push off, the paddle dipping rhythmically into the water, its splash blending with the river's constant murmur. The flooded landscape is a maze of submerged fields and temporary channels, but you follow familiar markers, clumps of tamarisk trees, or the tops of dikes still visible above the water. The journey is slow, requiring patience, each stroke of the paddle a steady, meditative motion that keeps you focused on the task. Your destination is a neighboring village a few miles downstream, where you'll trade for goods scarce in your own camp, perhaps honey or extra natron for preserving food and healing ailments. The Nile, swollen by the inundation, makes travel faster than in drier seasons, a fact your ancestors exploited during the Old Kingdom around 2600 BCE to ferry goods and stone for the pyramids. You carry the dried fish and beer as offerings, their value known to neighboring farmers who face the same flood-time scarcity. The boat glides over submerged fields, the water's surface rippling with silt, and you spot ibises wading in the shallows, their curved beaks probing for snails. Midday finds you at the neighboring village, its own camp perched on a rise above the flood. You pull the boat onto a muddy bank, the reeds creaking under your weight, and greet the villagers with a raised hand. The exchange is simple but deliberate, your fish and beer for a clay pot of honey and a small sack of lentils. The honey's sweet aroma is a rare treat, and you secure it carefully in the basket, wrapping it in a flax mat to prevent spills. The villagers share news of the flood's progress, their Nilometer showing a steady level, much like your own. You sit briefly to share a meal of barley flatbread and boiled watercress, the bread's nutty flavor pairing with the herb's peppery bite. The conversation is practical water levels, crop prospects, the health of livestock grounded in the shared rhythms of the Nile. The return journey is slower, the boat heavier with new goods. You paddle against the current now, your arms aching but moving steadily, the water's cool spray misting your face. Tommy's points out a shortcut through a flooded canal, a remnant of ancient irrigation channels dug during the reign of Menes, who united Egypt and tamed the river's flow. The canal's banks are barely visible, but the path is calmer. The water's surface smooth as you glide past submerged acacia trees. The task is repetitive, each paddle stroke a quiet affirmation of connection, linking your village to others through trade and shared survival. Back at your camp, you unload the goods, storing the honey and lentils in the communal pits. There, clay seals reapplied with a sprinkle of ash to deter pests. The air smells of earth and the faint sweetness of the honey, a small luxury that lifts the village's spirits. You help repair the boat, patching a small tear in the reeds with fresh papyrus and pitch, the sticky resin clinging to your fingers. The work is meticulous, the repetitive motions cut, bind, seal, calming your mind as the sun climbs higher, its warmth tempered by a breeze carrying the scent of the river. Evening gathers the village around the fire pit, the flames crackling as they consume dried palm fronds. You sit on a woven mat, the ground firm beneath you, and share a meal of roasted fish and boiled sedge roots, flavored with a touch of the newly acquired honey. The sweetness is a rare delight, blending with the root's earthy taste, and you sip beer from a shared jar, its yeasty temps familiar. Stories circulative, a trader who navigated the flood to bring grain to a starving village, or a season when the river carried boats as far as Memphis. An elder recalls the pyramid builders who used the inundation to float massive stones, their ingenuity a testament to the Nile's power. The tales, woven with practical wisdom, lull you into a state of calm as night falls. You lie on your mat under the stars, the air heavy with the scent of smoke and water. The Nile's distant roar is a constant hum, its waters still shaping the world below. You drift toward sleep, lulled by the fire's dying embers and the soft rustle of reeds. But a question lingers in the quiet, with the floodwaters receding soon. How will you prepare the fields for the bounty they promise? Harvesting the bounty, post-flood agriculture, the morning light spills over the horizon, clearer now as the mist of the flood season begins to lift. You rise from your reed mat in the temporary camp on higher ground, the air still heavy with the scent of damp earth, but carrying a new freshness, a sign that the Nile's waters are starting to recede. You pull on your linen tunic, its weave less damp than in recent weeks, and step out into the communal shelter. Below, the flooded plain is slowly giving way to patches of glistening mud, the river's gift of fertile silt ready to be worked. Today, you return to the fields, preparing to harvest the bounty left by the inundation, a practice central to Egyptian life since the pre-dynastic period around 4000 BCU. Begin by walking down the slope to the village, your bare feet sinking slightly into the softening mud. Its cool, slick texture, a reminder of the Nile's retreat. The air smells of rich silt and the faint, grassy scent of reeds drying in the sun. The fields, once submerged, now emerge as a patchwork of dark, wet earth, the silt deposited by the flood promising a bountiful harvest. You carry a wooden hoe, its blade worn smooth from seasons of use, and a woven basket for collecting stray debris. At the field's edge, you pause to check the village's nilometer. Its stone steps now partially exposed as the water level drops. The river has fallen a cubit since last week, a hopeful sign that planting can soon begin. Your first task is to clear the fields of debris twigs, reeds, and clumps of silt left by the receding waters. You work alongside neighbors, dragging branches to a pile at the field's edge, the wood scraping softly against the ground. The labor is methodical, each step a quiet preparation for the season ahead. You inspect the dikes built months ago to channel the floodwaters and find them softened but intact. With your hoe, you begin breaking up the hardened silt, its dark, crumbly texture yielding under the blade. The motion dig lift turn is repetitive, almost meditative. The earth's rich scent rising with each stroke, a promise of fertility. Midday brings a pause, and you gather with your family under a tamarisk tree, its feathery branches offering shade. You share a meal of barley flatbread, a handful of dried figs, and a paste of lentils flavored with foraged watercress. Its peppery bite, a familiar comfort. You sip water from a clay jar, its contents drawn from the high ground's well, and listen as your father speaks of the planting season during the reign of Djoser. Around 2650 BCE, when the Nile's silt-yielded crops so abundant the granaries overflowed, his words, rooted in memory, blend with the rustle of leaves overhead, grounding you in the cycle of renewal. The afternoon is spent sowing seeds in the freshly cleared fields. You carry a linen sack of emmer wheat and barley, scattering the grains in a practiced arc across the dark soil. Each seed sinks into the silt, its promise of growth nurtured by the river's gift. You press the seeds into the earth with your feet, a gentle shuffle that feels like a dance with the land, the mud cool and soft underfoot. The task is communal, with neighbors working their own plots nearby, their voices low as they discuss the soil's texture or the timing of the planting. The fields, enriched by the flood, are soft and pliable, a stark contrast to the cracked, dry earth of months ago. You also repair the irrigation canals, ensuring they're ready to guide water from the receding river during the growing season. With a digging stick, you clear silt from the channels, the wood scraping against the earth in a steady rhythm. You reinforce weak spots with wet clay, pressing it into place with your hands, the cool, pliable mud squishing between your fingers. The canals, dug by generations before you, are a testament to the ingenuity of your people, who learned to harness the Nile's cycles long before the pyramids rose. An elder recalls the canals of Memphis, expanded under the First Dynasty to feed growing cities, a story that ties your labor to a larger legacy. As the sun dips, casting a golden glow over the emerging fields, you return to the village to check your home. The floodwaters have retreated from the mud brick walls, leaving a line of dried silt. You sweep the courtyard with a reed broom, its bristles rustling softly, and inspect the storage pits, ensuring their seals remain intact. The air carries the scent of fresh earth and the faint sweetness of drying silt, a reminder of the land's rebirth. You sprinkle ash around the pits to deter pests, its powdery scent a familiar precaution, and feel a quiet satisfaction at the day's work. Evening gathers the village around the fire pit, the flames crackling as they consume dried palm fronds. You sit on a woven mat, the ground firm beneath you, and share a meal of roasted fish and boiled lotus roots, flavored with a touch of honey traded from a neighboring village. The honey's sweetness lifts the meal, blending with the roots' earthy taste. And you sip beer from a shared jar, its yeasty temps soothing. Stories circulate of a season when the silt was so rich it doubled the harvest, or a farmer who planted too early and lost his crop to a late flood. An elder speaks of the old kingdom, when the Nile's bounty fed the workers who built the pyramids, their labor a testament to the river's gifts. The tales, woven with hope, lull you into calm. As night falls, you lie on your mat under the stars, the air fresh with the scent of silt and smoke. The Nile's murmur is softer now, its waters receding to reveal the fertile land. You drift toward sleep, lulled by the fire's dying embers and the distant call of a heron. But a question lingers in the quiet, with the fields prepared and the planting begun. What celebrations will mark the river's gift to your village? Festivals and celebrations, thanking the Nile. The morning sun rises with a gentle warmth, its rays glistening on the newly exposed fields where the Nile's waters have receded, leaving behind a fertile blanket of dark silt. You rise from your reed mat, now back in your mud brick home in the village, the air fresher and less humid as the inundation season wanes. You pull on your linen tunic, its weave smooth against your skin, and step into the courtyard where the scent of drying earth and blooming lotus flowers fills the air. Today, the village prepares for a festival to honor Hapi, the god of the Nile's flood, a celebration of gratitude for the river's life-giving bounty, a tradition rooted in Egypt's history since the first dynasty around 3100 BCE. You begin by gathering offerings for the festival, walking to the small garden plot behind your home. With a flint knife, you cut a bundle of fresh leeks and a few lotus flowers, their delicate blue petals fragrant in the morning air. The knife's jagged edge slices cleanly through the stems, and you tie the bundle with a strip of flax, its faint, fibrous scent mingling with the greenery. From the storage pit, you retrieve a small clay jar of barley beer sealed with wax to preserve its yeasty temps, and a loaf of emmer bread baked in the communal oven, its nutty aroma still lingering. These offerings, simple but heartfelt, will join those of your neighbors in a ceremony at the river's edge. The village buzzes with quiet preparation. You pass women weaving garlands of lotus and papyrus, their hands moving deftly as they knot the stems, the flower's sweet scent drifting through the air. Children, freed from daily chores, carry baskets of dates and dried fish, their laughter brighter today, a reflection of the community's relief at the flood's safe retreat. You join your father at the shrine to Hapi, a modest mud brick structure near the Nile, its walls adorned with faded carvings of the god's plump, fertile figure. You help clean the altar, sweeping away dust with a reed broom, its bristles rustling softly, and arrange stones in a neat circle around it. A task as methodical as it is reverent. By mid-morning, the villagers gather at the shrine, their offerings piling high on the stone altar, baskets of grain, fish, and flowers, alongside jars of beer and honey. The air smells of earth, smoke, and the sweet temps of lotus, a sensory tapestry of gratitude. An elder named Meret, acting as priestess, leads the ceremony, her voice steady as she recites prayers passed down since the old kingdom. O Hapi, bringer of the black land, we thank you for your waters. For the silt that feeds our fields, you join the chant. Its repetitive cadence, soothing, blending with the Nile's soft murmur. Meret sprinkles river water over the offerings, the droplets catching the sunlight, and burns a handful of natron, its sharp, mineral scent rising in wisps of smoke. The ceremony moves to the riverbank, where a small reed boat, crafted with papyrus and painted with ochre, is prepared. You help place offerings, lotus flowers, a loaf of bread, a small fish sent to its hull, the reeds creaking softly under the weight. Meret sets the boat afloat, and you watch as the current carries it downstream, a symbolic gift to Hapi, its colors vivid against the muddy water. The act is simple, its rhythm lulling, as the boat bobs gently before vanishing around a bend. The villagers raise their voices in a song of thanks, the melody ancient and unadorned, its notes rising and falling like the river itself. Midday brings feasting, a rare abundance after weeks of rationed meals. You sit on woven mats near the shrine, sharing roasted fish, barley flatbread, and boiled lotus roots drizzled with honey traded from a neighboring village. The honey's sweetness lifts the meal, blending with the fish's smoky flavor, and you sip beer from a communal jar, its yeasty tang a festive luxury. Children play nearby, tossing balls of knotted rags, their laughter mingling with the chatter of adults. Your mother speaks of a festival from her youth, when the Nile's flood was perfect, yielding crops that sustained the village through a long drought. Her story, grounded in memory, ties the celebration to survival. The afternoon is filled with music and dance, a joyful release after the flood's challenges. A neighbor plays a reed flute, its haunting notes drifting over the crowd, while others clap rhythmically, their hands beating a steady pulse. You join a circle of dancers, your feet shuffling in the soft earth, the movements simple but communal, passed down through generations. The air carries the scent of dust and flowers, and the sun's warmth feels like a blessing. An elder recalls the festivals of the pyramid builders, who celebrated the Nile's bounty with feasts that fueled their monumental work, a tale that weaves joy with the river's power as the sun dips, casting a golden glow over the fertile fields. You help clean the shrine, sweeping away stray petals and ash. The task is quiet, the broom's soft rustle, a contrast to the day's earlier revelry. You light a small oil lamp at the altar, its flaxwick sputtering as it burns sesame oil, casting a warm glow on Hapi's carved image. The act feels personal, a final gesture of thanks, tying you to the countless villagers who honored the river before you. Evening gathers the community around a fire pit, the flames crackling as they consume dried palm fronds. You sit on a reed mat, sharing a final meal of lentils and watercress, the herb's peppery bite, a quiet reminder of the land's renewal. Stories flow of a festival when the Nile's silt was so rich it fed the village for years, or a dancer who leaped so high he seemed to touch the stars. An elder speaks of the old kingdom, when celebrations honored both Hapi and the pharaohs who channeled the river's gifts. The tales, woven with gratitude, lull you into calm. The fires glow, warming your face as night falls. You lie on your mat in your home, the stars bright through the open doorway. The Nile's murmur is gentle now, its waters settling into their ancient path. You drift toward sleep, lulled by the scent of earth and smoke. But a question lingers in the quiet, with the flood's gifts now sown. What lessons will this season teach for the challenges of future inundations? Lessons of the Nile. Preparing for the next cycle, the morning sun rises gently, casting a warm glow over the village where the Nile's waters have now fully receded, leaving behind fields of dark, fertile silt ready for the growing season. You rise from your reed mat in your mud brick home, the air crisp with the scent of fresh earth and the faint temps of drying reeds. You pull on your linen tunic, its weave soft and familiar, and step into the courtyard where the village hums with the quiet rhythm of renewal. The inundation is over, but its lessons linger, guiding your preparations for the next cycle of flood and harvest. A practice rooted in the wisdom of Egypt's farmers since the pre-dynastic period around 4000 BCE. You begin the day by walking to the fields, your bare feet pressing into the soft, silty soil, its cool texture, a reminder of the Nile's recent gift. The air carries the rich, loamy scent of the earth, mingling with the faint sweetness of blooming wildflowers along the riverbank. Your task is to assess the fields, ensuring they're ready for the crops now sprouting from the seeds sown days ago. You carry a wooden hoe, its blade smoothed by years of use, and gently turn the soil in a corner of your plot, checking its moisture and texture. The silt is dark and pliable, crumbling easily under your fingers, a sign of the river's perfect flood, neither too weak to nourish nor too strong to destroy. The motion dig lift turn is steady, almost meditative, tying you to the land at the field's edge. You pause to inspect the irrigation canals, their banks still intact from repairs made before the flood. You clear a few stray clumps of dried silt with a digging stick, the wood scraping softly against the earth, ensuring water will flow evenly when needed. The canals, a legacy of your ancestors' ingenuity, were dug centuries ago to harness the Nile's cycles, a practice refined during the reign of Menes around 3100 BCE. You reinforce a weak spot with wet clay, pressing it into place with your hands, the cool mud squishing between your fingers. The task is methodical, its rhythm grounding you in the moment as the sun climbs higher, its warmth tempered by a gentle breeze. Midday brings a pause, and you sit with your family under a sycamore fig tree, its broad leaves casting dappled shade. You share a meal of barley flatbread, a handful of fresh dates plucked from a nearby tree, and a paste of lentils flavored with wild mint, its sharp freshness a gift of the post-flood land. You sip water from a clay jar, its contents drawn from the village well, and listen as your mother reflects on the flood just past. She speaks of its balance high enough to enrich the soil, low enough to spare the Homza harmony your village prayed for during offerings to Hapi. Her words, rooted in memory, recall a season during the Old Kingdom when a perfect flood fed the pyramid builders, tying your efforts to a larger legacy. The afternoon is spent planning for the next inundation, a cycle always on the horizon. You join neighbors at the communal granary, checking the stores of grain and dried goods that sustained you through the flood. The mud brick structure, reinforced during the inundation, stands firm, and you help reseal the storage pits with clay and ash, their powdery scent a familiar precaution against pests. You count the sacks of barley and wheat, ensuring enough remains to last until the new harvest, a task requiring careful tallying on a notched stick. An elder named Tehodip shares a lesson from his youth, a season when the village underestimated its stores, forcing trade with distant towns. His story, grounded in experience, underscores the need for foresight. You also walk the village's dikes, assessing their condition for the next flood. The mud walls, softened by the recent waters, need minor repairs, and you carry a basket of clay to patch cracks, pressing it into place with a flat stone. The work is slow, the repetitive motion scoop, press, smooth. Neighbors work nearby, their voices low as they discuss improvements, raising a section higher, widening a canal for better water flow. These lessons, drawn from the flood just endured, are practical, a collective wisdom that has sustained your people since the days of the first dynasty. As the sun dips, casting a golden glow over the sprouting fields, you return to your home to clean the courtyard, sweeping away dust and dried silt with a reed broom. The bristles rustle softly, a quiet sound against the village's hum. You check the mud brick walls, running your hands along their rough surface to ensure no cracks have formed. A final precaution before the growing season takes hold. The air carries the scent of fresh earth and the faint sweetness of dates, a reminder of the land's promise. Evening gathers the village around the fire pit, the flames crackling as they consume dried tamarisk branches. You sit on a woven mat, the ground cool beneath you, and share a meal of roasted fish and boiled sedge roots, flavored with a touch of honey. The fish's smoky warmth blends with the root's earthy taste, and you sip beer from a shared jar, its yeasty temps soothing. Stories circulate of a flood that taught the village to build higher dikes, or a farmer who saved his crop with a clever irrigation trick. An elder recalls the reign of Khufu, when the Nile cycles were studied to feed a growing empire, a tale that weaves resilience with hope. The fire's glow and the story's cadence lull you into calm. As night falls, you lie on your mat in your home, the stars bright through the open doorway. The Nile's murmur is soft now, its waters settled into their ancient path. You drift towards sleep, lulled by the scent of earth and smoke. But a question lingers in the quiet. With the lessons of this flood, how will you pass them on to ensure your village thrives in the cycles to come? Passing down wisdom, teaching the next generation. The morning sun bathes the village in a soft, golden light, its warmth coaxing new sprouts from the fertile silt left by the Nile's receded waters. You rise from your reed mat in your mud brick home, the air fresh with the scent of blooming crops and the faint, earthy temps of the river nearby. You pull on your linen tunic, its weave softened by wear, and step into the courtyard, where the village hums with the steady rhythm of the growing season. The inundation is a memory now, but its lessons endure. And today you focus on passing down the knowledge that has sustained your people. Since the pre-dynastic period around 4000 BC, ensuring the next generation is ready for the Nile's cycles. You begin by gathering the village children, including your younger siblings, near the fields. They sit on woven mats under a tamarisk tree, its feathery branches casting dappled shade. You carry a wooden hoe and a small basket of tools, a flint knife, a digging stick, and a notched stick for measuring, to show them the basics of farming, the Nile's gift. The air smells of rich soil and the faint sweetness of early wheat sprouts, a reminder of the land's renewal. You demonstrate how to turn the soil, guiding a young boy's hands on the hoe as it breaks the dark silt, its crumbly texture yielding easily. The motion dig lift turn is simple but deliberate, and you explain how the flood's silt nourishes the crops, a lesson your father taught you years ago. The children listen, their eyes wide as you describe the Nile, pointing to the stone steps near the riverbank, now fully exposed. You show them how to mark water levels on a stick, recounting how the flood reached 16 cubits this season, the ideal height for a bountiful harvest. Your words are steady, weaving in stories of the Old Kingdom. Around 2600 BCE, when farmers used the Nilometer to predict harvests that fed the pyramid builders, the children mimic your movements, scratching notches with a flint knife, their small hands careful but eager. The task is repetitive, its rhythm grounding, the faint scrape of the knife blending with the rustle of leaves overhead. Midday brings a pause, and you share a meal with the children under the tree, sitting on the mats. You pass around barley flatbread, a handful of fresh dates, and a clay jar of water drawn from the village well. The bread's nutty flavor pairs with the date's sweetness, and you encourage the children to chew slowly, teaching them to appreciate the land's gifts. You tell a story of a flood during the reign of Djoser, when the village's careful measurements ensured enough grain to last a drought. The tale, rooted in memory, sparks questions. How high can the river rise? Why does Hoppy bring the silt? And you answer patiently, tying their curiosity to the practical wisdom of survival. The afternoon is spent teaching the children to maintain the irrigation canals, a task vital for the growing season. You guide them to a small channel, showing them how to clear silt with a digging stick, the wood scraping softly against the earth. You let a girl try, her hands tentative but growing confident as you explain how the canals, dug by ancestors centuries ago, guide water to the fields. You show them how to patch weak spots with clay, pressing it into place with your hands, the cool mud squishing between your fingers. The children imitate you, their laughter mixing with the squelch of mud, learning through doing as you share a tale of Menes, who united Egypt and expanded canals to feed a growing nation. You also teach them about the village's rituals. Walking them to the shrine of Hapi, you describe the offering's lotus flowers, bread, fish placed on the altar during the flood, and how the small reed boat carried thanks to the god. The children touch the shrine's mud brick walls, tracing the faded carvings of Hapi's plump figure, their fingers curious. You light a small oil lamp, its flaxwick sputtering with sesame oil, and let them sprinkle natron around the altar, its sharp mineral scent filling the air. The act is simple, a lesson in reverence, connecting them to the spiritual practices that have bound your people to the Nile for millennia. As the sun dips, casting a warm glow over the sprouting fields, you lead the children to the riverbank, where you show them how to weave a small fishing net from flax fibers. Sitting on the soft earth, you guide their hands in knotting the and sloop, pull, knot the coarse fibers, brushing their fingers. The task is slow, but their focus is unwavering. And you share a story of a fisherman who taught his son to navigate the floodwaters, ensuring the village's survival. The air carries the scent of water and silt, and the Nile's gentle murmur underscores your words, a reminder of its constant presence. Evening gathers the village around the fire pit, the flames crackling as they consume dried palm fronds. You sit with the children and their families on woven mats, sharing a meal of roasted fish and boiled lotus roots, flavored with wild mint. The fish's smoky warmth blends with the root's earthy taste, and you sip beer from a shared jar, its yeasty Thames soothing. The children share what they've learned, their voices eager as they describe the Nilometer and the canals. An elder tells of the pyramid builders who passed down knowledge to ensure the Nile's bounty fed their work, a tale that weaves learning with legacy. The fire's glow and the story's cadence lull you into calm as night falls. You lie on your mat in your home, the stars bright through the open doorway. The Nile's murmur is soft, its waters settled into their ancient path. You drift towards sleep, lulled by the scent of earth and smoke. But a question lingers in the quiet. With the wisdom of this flood passed to the next generation, what new challenges will the Nile bring to test their resilience?